This video contains spoilers for Greener Grass, and I would recommend watching the movie before watching this video. Also, this video is kind of structured weirdly and doesn't have any title cards that split it up, so here are the timestamps for everything I'm going to talk about. Greener Grass is a strange movie.
Mommy, I watch Popeye.
No, baby, it's a school night.
You're a school!
Juliet, your mother is not a school!
I am, Mom. I'm full of classrooms. So many clocks in me.
Get to your room!
This film is the directorial debut of Jocelyn DeBoer and Don Luby, who also wrote and starred in the film. Jocelyn and Don have a unique talent for presenting typical situations from a different and satirical perspective. This is also done in a short film they directed together, Arrival, which is available to watch for free on Vimeo and a great introduction to their style of directing. When you first watch Greener Grass, you'll notice a few key things about the presentation that seem pretty weird. The movie almost looks like a soap opera, and something about the tone feels off. The movie seems like it's hiding something. At many moments, the film seems like something might cause the mask to slip off and turn it into a horror movie. Although this movie can be viewed as a horror movie in a lot of ways, except the horror comes from the shockingly accurate, although extreme portrayal of many of the darker archetypes of United States suburbia and the people that live in it. Many people refer to it as a black comedy, and I guess that would be a more accurate description. Although this isn't the first piece of media to present suburban life in a non-typical way, I've seen few be able to pull it off so well and still be funny while having a lot to say for itself. A lot of people make comparisons to David Lynch and Wes Anderson when talking about this movie, and the directors even cite them as inspiration, but let's be honest here, nobody knows who those people are. But another comparison people often make is to Adult Swim, which I find understandable. Adult Swim has a lot of weird shows, but the thing I see most relevant from Adult Swim when thinking about this movie is actually their 11-minute YouTube short, Too Many Cooks. Both Greener Grass and Too Many Cooks use a setting that is very common in the media, suburbs and sitcoms. And both take these settings that seem eerily familiar and comforting and then subvert them, and try to make you feel like a fish out of water, but still keep you watching out of almost a morbid curiosity. I've seen this movie at least 5 times recently, and even so, I still struggle to interpret a lot of the things in the film. That usually makes me ask myself, is this movie just weird for the sake of being weird? Honestly, I don't think so. It's hard for me to put this movie in the same class as things like the Eric Andre Show, which, while still funny, would be hard to convince me that there is some deeper meaning beyond Eric trying to scare the shit out of his guests or make them as uncomfortable as possible. So, with all that said, please don't consider this video the end-all meaning of Greener Grass. Instead, I'd just like to analyze a couple of the characters and discuss some of the metaphors and events in the movie and talk about what I think they might mean. Hey Vsauce, Michael here. What is normal? Is normal even a real thing? Greener Grass presents a satirical take on American upper-middle-class suburban life and pushes to provide commentary on many of the things that are typically considered normal there, while at the same time pushing many staples of these communities to their extremes. Having grown up in an area far from what people would consider suburban, I remember whenever I would visit a community like this, something always seemed weird, and when talking to people who have grown up in similar areas as mine, they all seemed to share a similar sentiment when it came to suburban towns. Take all this with a grain of salt, because everything I'm saying here comes from personal experience, but the general consensus I get about suburban towns is that, much like Greener Grass, to outsiders, something about these communities feels off, like something is being hidden. Suburban living in America mostly took off around the 50s and 60s, and still to this day is considered the norm by many people. When suburbs started popping up all around America, people didn't have access to the internet, and so people largely lived in their own bubbles, and, other than the odd vacation or story in the newspaper, didn't really get exposed to other cultures or the atrocities happening all over the world, or even in their own country. With the age of the internet and suburbia slowly dying out, younger people are able to take a look back on those times and point out some of the weird things that were considered normal then. Take all the recipes attempting to combine Jell-O with every food, for example. But Greener Grass pushes the weirdness of suburbia and living in a bubble to its extremes, and satirizes many of the things considered typical in suburban life, and the views and actions of many people that live there. One of the first things you'll notice in Greener Grass is a large amount of conformity. A few things used to emphasize this are things like everybody wearing braces and driving golf carts, but those are pretty obvious examples. However, you'll notice a large emphasis on conformity within the character's actions as well. For example, the extreme, almost absurd level of politeness that everybody has. Take this scene, for example.
Still there.
It's okay.
Are you sure?
It's fine.
You're not gonna tell?
No.
Oh, Jill, I think you have the beaucoup de fromage.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
Many people consider it rude to send your food back at a restaurant, but here we see that notion pushed to an extreme where everybody would rather eat their food off the floor than do the rude thing and ask for a new plate. Another scene where this is done with food happens during a party.
now, Berlin, is that safe?
Berlin. That's a good baby name.
We see here that clearly nobody likes the food being served, but everybody is way too polite to say anything, and so they just spit their food out and continue on like nothing happened. Another example of conformity that is being pushed is in this scene.
Oh my god. Jill, what if your property was part of Pangea?
What's Pangea?
You stop that. We're Christian.
What this scene says to me is that everybody in this community probably goes to church and claims to be Christian, but that's more of a formality. They don't actually believe in these Christian views. They just say that they're Christian to fit in. They do these things not because they want to, they do it because that's what is expected of them within this bubble. Because within this bubble, these things are, well, normal. Jill is clearly the main character of her story. The start of her story is inside the bubble, but as we learn towards the end of the film, she is actually kind of an outsider to this society. As such, she has to make every effort she can to fit in, and she struggles. She does everything she can to be polite and fit in with the imaginary rules of this bubble, and it ends up breaking her when she realizes that she can't. She has tried so hard to fit into this society that she has no genuine connections with anybody except her son, Julian. I think this is because she sees a lot of herself in Julian. Her old self, I mean. The part of herself she lost when coming to and integrating into this society. I feel like this is why she becomes so upset after the scene where Julian turns into a dog. In this scene, after Jill and Julian argue in the bathroom, he comes out to sing happy birthday to his dad.
Happy birthday to you.
Falls into the pool, and reemerges as a dog.
Julian, are you a dog now?
Julian, is that you?
I don't think it's a coincidence that there was a priest present during all of this. I feel like this scene is trying to say that Julian is essentially being baptized, or reborn into something that society finds acceptable. And as such, Jill has lost her only connection to her old self, and her only real connection that she had to this society. Her husband and friends might as well be strangers to her. Her marriage is so unimportant to her that she accidentally makes out with Lisa's husband. And after she loses her last connection to the society, she starts a huge downward spiral. Another thing that I feel that the movie is trying to do with Jill and Julian is make a comment on how many people view their children. In the beginning, Julian isn't like the others in this society. He doesn't seem to have too big of a concern with how people view him and how he fits in with everybody around him, and this tends to anger his parents. It happens when he's playing catch with his dad.
Eyes on the ball. Get that glove up.
I am made of stone. Oh.
What are you doing, man? No, it doesn't hurt.
He didn't even try. We're wasting our money on baseball.
And during his music recital.
You embarrassed us. That was humiliating.
I wrote that.
No more piano lessons for Julian.
But I love piano.
This angers his parents, because his parents don't want a free-spirited individual who isn't afraid to express himself. They want somebody who will fit in with their image of a perfect family and do what he's told. Because really, they don't want a kid. They want a dog. Another example of how people like this tend to view their kids is when Jill gives her baby away to Lisa. I've seen people say that this is her giving her all not to let down the people around her in order to fit in, and I could see that, but I see a strange parallel between these two scenes.
I love her.
Lisa, do you want her?
I have a bunch of robes. I was just bringing them over for the clothing drive.
Rose?
Yeah, I got 4 for Christmas last year.
Oh.
Do you want one?
I think what is trying to be said here is that these people don't seem to value their children. They view them like clothes, just something to keep up appearances and fit in with the people around them. To them, their kids are an accessory. Also, if I could get a little pretentious and over-analytical, after Jill escapes the bubble, we see her sitting at a diner and we hear a TV in the background say this.
You're an animal. You're an animal.
I think this may be how Jill views herself in this moment. She's lost her kids, her house, and her husband, and all other means of fitting in with her society. At this point, to them at least, she may as well be an animal. The thing I feel most about Lisa is that she wants to be Jill. Throughout the film, she seems to want many of the things that Jill has, and by the end of the film, she has taken a lot of things from Jill. She takes her baby, she takes her house, in a way she takes Jill's husband from her, and by the end, she is even wearing Jill's clothes and has Jill's ex-husband working as her pool cleaner. In the film, she seems very critical of her own family and full of praise for Jill's.
It's like I hear it in my head, it just comes out so different.
Music isn't for everyone.
What?
Maybe saxophone just isn't your thing.
It wasn't that bad. It was better than Julian. Julian can't even read sheet music.
I thought Julian's performance was unique.
Unique?
Beethoven couldn't read sheet music.
Lisa seems to play a role I think is very common in upper middle class adults. She's doing everything that she's been told is the right way to do things, like getting married, buying a house, having kids. But she isn't happy. She seems to not be attracted to her husband, and honestly seems to resent him.
Is everything okay with you and Dennis?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. We just, aren't having sex right now. Everything's really good, though.
And she even seems to resent most of the things her son does as well. It seems to me that she wanted a different life but didn't realize it. And after believing she's done everything right and still not being happy, she gets jealous of Jill, who in her mind is doing all the same things but is happy. It's almost like she's seeing the grass on the other side, and her it seems greener. With Lisa, we see another commentary on how these people view their children. Her son Bob seems like a nice, well-adjusted kid, but one day he's watching TV and accidentally watches a show called Kids with Knives. And suddenly, he becomes a little fucking demon.
You look like shit, Lisa!
Bob! You're grounded!
Fine! You assholes don't even let me drive! Don't you fucking talk about my facelift!
These people are asking for a chair.
Bob is essentially being raised by a mother who didn't want him and is very critical of his actions. This usually causes children to have tendencies to act out, things like stealing and lighting fires. And when this happens, and parents don't want to admit their own faults, they blame the media.
I know that one place parents want us to draw the line is with violence in video games. Like the Grinch who stole Christmas, these violent video games threaten to rob this particular holiday season of a spirit of goodwill. These games teach a child to enjoy inflicting torture.
It's also worth noting how these two scenes reflect each other.
I love her just as much as I love Bob and Twilson. You can have Bob.
Essentially, she's a caring mom who loves her kids more than anything, but only when that persona suits her needs. The meaning of Twilson is a little harder to interpret. Lisa's other child, Twilson, who is a soccer ball, I feel can be looked at as parents trying to mold their child into what they want rather than what their child wants. Lisa is trying to keep up appearances as a soccer mom with the perfect family, and somebody who does this might ignore the wants of their child and force them to play soccer. And at that point, the child is essentially made an object of their parents' persona. In other words, a soccer ball. I feel like this is why she's okay with giving away Bob in the end. She has her perfect family as the soccer mom with the loving husband and 2 perfect kids, and Bob doesn't fit into the persona that she's crafting for herself. So her solution is just to get rid of him. I think it was said best in this video on greener grass.
Little Helen is not so much a character as she is a concept.
Towards the end of the movie, Jill comes home after having lost her whole family, and she sees little Helen. It's kind of hard to notice, but if you look closely you'll find that little Helen doesn't really fit in with the people in this society. I mean, come on, she's not even wearing braces. When Jill sees little Helen, she is saying a lot of things that Jill has said throughout the movie.
Okay, Rocket Man! Yeah. Okay, Julian's not invited back to Rocket now. Like, yeah, come on. Don't eat crash, Julian. Julian, don't eat your crash.
And after a brief argument,
This is my stuff.
No, it's mine! No, I'm sure it's mine!
This is my house.
Please, I don't think you're right about this.
Jill runs away and leaves the bubble, and it seems like if she didn't leave, little Helen would have killed her. I think what little Helen represents in this film is somebody's old self combined with the pressure to fit in. The pressure to follow all the unwritten rules and social norms of the bubble. The pressure that, if you can't handle it, will kill you. In the film, there's a large focus on Cheryl, a local yoga teacher who was murdered in her home. Later, it's revealed that she was murdered by little Helen. I feel like Cheryl is a representation of Jill, but the Jill that didn't run away. The Jill that stayed in the bubble and let the societal pressures kill her. Alright, now if you don't think that I'm big brain yet, just wait until we talk about the ending. In the end of the film, after little Helen chases Jill out of her house, Jill runs away and leaves the bubble. She rips off her braces and drives to a small house in the middle of the woods. She knocks on the door and tells the people living there that this is the house she grew up in, and asks if she could sit on the toilet and think.
If I could just come here and sit on the toilet I used to think on.
I need to get these kids back to bed.
After that is refused, she asks the mother there if she can have one of her kids.
Would it be okay if it's not too much trouble?
Yeah?
Could I have one of your children?
The mother understandably refuses, but Jill abducts one of her children anyways. Later, we then see them in the diner that I mentioned before, where they see on the TV that little Helen has been arrested. Afterwards, Jill goes back to the bubble, and as she's watching her new abducted child play soccer, we see this.
Hey, Lisa. Do the children play soccer on graves?
Yeah.
Never noticed that before.
Where are you going?
I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here.
Out of bounds.
First, I want to mention that after Jill has completely left the society, she sees Julian in the moon from before he was turned into a dog. I think this can be looked at as her being able to reconnect with her old self now that she's finally left the bubble. This could be why she goes back to the house that she grew up in, and asks to sit on the toilet where she used to think. After realizing she is no longer a part of the bubble, she is trying to make a connection to her old self and remember who she was. But unfortunately, she doesn't get that opportunity. I also think that little Helen getting arrested is representative of Jill getting rid of the old self that she could have stayed with after leaving the bubble. And finally, I think her noticing the graves is representative of two things. One, that you don't notice the weirdness of where you are until you leave. And two, I think the graves are everybody in the bubble's old selves that died when they integrated into the society. I think Greener Grass is a fantastic movie, and I rarely see directorial debuts as good as this one. It's also rare that I see a director be able to make a movie that is simultaneously funny, weird, and strangely insightful all at the same time. It's a film that I find hard to recommend to people because for me it's in a class all of its own, but at the same time, I think it's a film everybody should watch. So, if you haven't been able to tell from this video, I would definitely recommend going and watching it. At the time of writing, it is available to watch for free on Hulu and available to buy or rent from many other places. I would also recommend going and watching Arrival on Vimeo as an introduction to Dawn and Jocelyn's directing style, and I will definitely be keeping my eye out for what Jocelyn DeBoer and Don Luby make next. If you have seen this film, I would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments, and if you've sat this video through to the end, thank you for watching.